Hey guys, so I'm going to try to tell you this case, Arizona versus Gant. It's about the Fourth Amendment and when you're pulled over or when cops can look through your things. So this happened in 1999. There was this guy named Gant, and cops had gotten like some anonymous tip that this dude was selling drugs, and they had a location of where he was doing this, and it wasn't Gant's house, it was like a friend of his. And so cops show up, knock on the door. Gant opens up the door. They're like, "Who are you? Cops, who are you?" He's like, "I'm, Gant." They're like, "Who's the owner?" He's like, "The owner's not here. He'll be back soon." Da 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 da. And so the cops weren't like really all that happy with that, so they walked away. Meanwhile, they didn't have a warrant or anything like that. They walked away, and they go and they look up the guy Gant, and they see that he has a suspended driver's license and like an outstanding warrant for his arrest. So they came back late. The cops came back later to that house that night, and when they were there, first of all, Gant wasn't even there at first. They saw a lady in the back of the house with another man, and I guess they were doing some sort of drug deal in the car. And the woman got arrested for like having paraphernalia, and the dude got arrested for not identifying himself, because I told you guys that can happen. So then all of a sudden Gant comes up, and he's driving his car, and police, have him stop. He gets out, so it's these two. They have the woman and the other guy already locked up in the back seat. Gant parks his car. He gets out, and police end up handcuffing him and putting him in the back of their patrol car, right? So now he's not even near his vehicle. Then police go over to Gant's car and just start fucking, ransacking it. And they actually ended up calling for more backup. They called for 2 more officers. They locked Gant in the back seat of their vehicle. They placed him in the patrol car, and then they looked through his vehicle, found a gun and cocaine, and they went through every single compartment they could. Like where they found the cocaine was in like a small little pocket in a jacket in the very back seat of his car. So we're gonna keep going. But basically, the guy, Gant, was then charged, obviously, with like possession of a narcotic and then paraphernalia. And so he asked the court to suppress this evidence on the ground that there was no warrant. This was like a warrantless search of his vehicle, and it violated the Fourth Amendment. Basically, there was other case law prior to this that said, okay, well, you have a lesser expectation of privacy when you're on the road because we need to keep everyone safe. And so if cops lawfully arrest you, and they can search anywhere within, like, if you put your arms out, anywhere within, like, your wingspan, and anywhere you could have, like, readily been, like, accessible to. So I think I've talked about this where Jay-Z must have had really good lawyers where he goes, well, my glove compartment is locked, so is the trunk in the back, and I know my rights, so you're going to need a warrant for that. Well, his lawyer is correct in that, well, it depends. It always depends. Don't take my word for this. But because if your glove compartment is locked, that means that when you're driving, that's not readily accessible to you. You can't just like open it up and like pull out shit that you need, or contraband or weapons or whatever it may be. So when your glove compartment is locked, so is the trunk in the back. Yes, the cops needed a warrant for that. And especially when we're going back to this case, Arizona v. Gant, they already had Mr. Gant locked up and locked in a patrol vehicle. So he was causing no present harm. He was not a threat. There was no need for officers to go through his entire vehicle, find a little thing of coke in a very back pocket in his back seat, and paraphernalia without a warrant. And plus, as I've discussed prior in Terry versus Ohio, you cannot frisk a person, meaning you cannot pat down a person unless you believe that they have a weapon on them, or they're about to commit, a dangerous crime or something like that. To stop someone, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that crime is afoot. And then you only can stop to briefly investigate to dispel any kind of like suspicion that you may have, right? So basically, let's look at this. This dude, a fucking rat calls the police, says, hey, I think this dude's selling drugs. The cops show up to this house. Gant opens the door. He's like, nah, the owner's not home. The cops go around. They say, who's this motherfucker? Let's see, what's on his, let's see if he's got any arrests or whatever. I could be a little bit wrong with that. They might have known him in the neighborhood as that, but they could only get him on the suspended license. So I apologize if that's a little mixy. But so then the cops come back to the house later that night with no warrant, no problem. First of all, if you have a tip from a informant or whatever, you have to have additional corroboration with that tip, because there's so much likelihood that it's just bullshit that you cannot just rely on one person's testimony, one person's tip. So they come back later that night without a warrant. They arrest these people in the back who are just like, doing whatever, charge them with paraphernalia, charge them with possession, and charge the guy for not identifying himself. I don't even know who he was because he didn't identify himself. And then Gant comes up. Gant gets out of the car. They put him in cuffs, lock him in the back, and go ransack his fucking vehicle, find cocaine, find possession, charge him with these things. And he's like, no, I'm not guilty of this. This was a warrantless search under the Fourth Amendment. We are free from unreasonable searches and seizures. And every warrant must be signed by a neutral and detached magistrate that specifically describes the places to be searched and the people to be searched and the places to be seized. I'm sorry, I'm doing this without my notes. And every warrant must have a finding of probable cause. And so here, I'm sorry. Okay. So basically, this is what happened. Gant was found guilty on both of the drug counts and was sentenced to three years, and he appeals, right? And he says that the search of the car was unreasonable within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. And so they discussed these like other cases. Like I said, there was this other case called like Chimo, I think it's Chimo v. California, where it's the wingspan if you are getting lawfully arrested. So like if you are pulled over for a traffic stop and you have a bench warrant and they're arresting you, there was an exception that went with that justified officer safety and like to prevent spoliation of evidence, that they could just go search through the vehicle without a warrant. But that doesn't, that like if there's spoliation of evidence or there's officer safety, it better be apparently clear. Now that's not going to hold up so well. But again, don't take my word for it. So, but anyway, at the end of this, the court held that basically a warrantless search of the arrestee's car, Mr. Gant's car, can't be justified as necessary to protect the officers at the scene or to prevent the destruction of evidence. Accordingly, the court held that the search of Gant's car was unreasonable. Can you believe that? Like, well, thank God for this guy, but can you believe going to jail for 3 years for these possession charges and whatnot for a violation of the Fourth Amendment? You had no warrant. You had no warrant exception. So there's warrant exceptions that you can get around. Cops can use. I call it escapes. There's these ways that you can escape having a warrant, and we'll talk about that next time. But I hope I made sense, and I hope you guys enjoyed another Fourth Amendment case.